All right. I would like to bring on my guests. I always enjoy these conversations. KJ No. KJ No, he's a journalist, political analyst, writer, and specializing in the politics. He's he's contributed to the book, Capitalism on Symbolism of It's also on in the network, the China Report. I don't remember the network.
Jamal, your mic is sounding not great. Your audio is not sounding great. But yes, that's me, KJ No.
And my audio is muffled?
Yes, you're a little muffled. You're better now. Yes. And I'm the host of the China Report on the Breakthrough News Network.
Thank you. The Breakthrough News Report, China Report. Okay, I sound better. Everybody knew. Okay. It just started okay, and there's audio good. Okay. I have no idea what just happened with that. Thank you for that. I appreciate it. KJ, welcome to the show, man. I always appreciate these conversations. My audience always appreciate these conversations. They said Jamal is a dolphin. And they say he's underwater. He sounds better now. China put out a video, very defiant video, actually. And the video right here, I'm going to play it. I'm going to get your take on this because there are two things. One, it seemed that China relaxed sanctions on, I forget exactly what it was. And the catch in the American media was, is China softening on this notion of defiance to Trump? There was another article that was pointing out that manufacturing in China was taking a dip, which is expected. It's a trade war, right? But this is the video that they put out, which, you know, this kind of preserves this notion of where they stand on this issue.
And fiercer storm. Have you heard of the eye of the storm? It appears calm for a moment, but is actually a deadly trap. The calm before an even fiercer storm. The U.S. has stirred up a global tariff storm and deliberately targeted China, playing a 90-day pause game with other nations, forcing them to limit trade with China. This is just like the deadly trap of the eye of the storm. Bowing to a bully is like drinking poison to quench thirst. It only deepens the crisis. The U.S. once accused Japan of dumping semiconductors and crushed companies like Toshiba. Later, it forced Japan to sign the Plaza Accord, pushing the economy into decades of anemic growth.
I'm not going to play all of that, but I think you get the hint. Playing along is effectively drinking poison. It's not going to quench your thirst. You're going to die from it. And of course, this pitch is to other countries saying, hey, we need to work together, not function as individuals and immediately kowtow to the US that effectively is blackmailing the world. Now, from my understanding, and correct me if I'm wrong, China has been making inroads with other countries. Xi Jinping has been going to Southeast Asian countries. They've been united on this, Vietnam, Thailand. He has been even making inroads into Europe, trying to get Europe to work with China. If I'm not mistaken, there's a delegation that is supposed to be going to China in May. And so he has been making inroads to these other countries. This pitch on some level has been working. And Trump's pitch of, hey, work with us in order to go after China seems to have completely just fallen flat and failed. Give me your take on this. I mean, are they still taking the hard stance in the way that they did early on in this tariff war? Or are they softening on some as a way of offering this kind of fig leaf of, okay, we can soften on this if you soften on this, basically trying to find some way back. What's going on? Explain what is happening in this trade war.
I think the Chinese have always wanted a modus vivendi. They do not want to get into a tariff war, a trade war, any kind of war with the United States. And at the end of the day, they're pragmatists. So I think they're looking at the situation and seeing if they can throw out a few token gestures, see if that will make the U.S. Come down from, its position. Certainly, the U.S. is already, let's put it bluntly, it's capitulated. It's taken back its moves multiple times, right? First, it imposed the tariffs, then it stayed the tariffs, except for China, and then it decided that it was not going to tariff electronics, which makes no sense unless you don't want to reshore the electronics industry, which you think you might if you were thinking of actually having a viable industrial policy.
Right.
And then now it seems that they're going to remove some of the tariffs on automobiles and auto parts, and they're not going to invoke multiple tariffs, because what happens is that components go back and forth over the border, and if you keep levying those tariffs, those are going to pile up very rapidly. As I said, an American car made 100% in the United States has about 12,000 parts from China. Okay, so it's not going to work, and often parts are shipped back and forth along the manufacturing process. For example, between Mexico and the U.S., between Canada and the U.S. So they've lifted some of those tariffs, or they seem to be in the process of lifting them. And so I think the U.S. is climbing down from its extreme position. We certainly know that that position was not sustainable. Essentially, all the markets were tanking. People were shorting the dollar, So that's a situation in which even Trump and his plutocrats around him said, you have to stop doing this. You're killing us, right? So in that context, I think that the Chinese are pragmatists. I think they're signaling that they're willing to negotiate, but they still want Trump to drop his tariffs. That's their bottom line. They're saying to Trump, we're not going to come and negotiate. We're not like the 200 countries. There aren't 200 countries in the world, but we're not like those 200 countries that are already signing deals with you, in what is it, in days. Your average trade deal takes 18 months to negotiate, but somehow they're going to compress like 2 deals, 3 deals a day. Nonsense. But anyway, I think that the Chinese are both sitting back. They're making some small gestures to see if, Trump administration will respond. Some of their own reduction in tariffs is for their advantage, because there are certain things that they want to import without, paying through the nose for it. And then I think they're also going to stand their ground, that they want Trump to come down. They do not want to feed the bully, because that gets you nowhere. You feed the bully your lunch money once, you've just given up your lunch money in perpetuity, right? You cannot do that. And so I think they're standing strong. If you look at the other messages that are coming out of top officials, they're saying that we are ready to go to the mat. We can go to the mat, and we're happy to do so. But just remember, you are going to be in a world of pain, and our capacity to, manage pain, our pain threshold is higher than yours.
I was speaking to Carl Jha, and he pointed out, he said China had been preparing for this going back since the first Trump administration. Like that, basically, they understood that when Trump came in, that he was going to do something like this because he did something like this the first time around. And they had been effectively preparing measures, strategy about what are we going to do when he comes back in and he implements a similar policy, which is the reason why you got this kind of steady, no beef, or we're not taking your picks. We're not, we're moving grain to somewhere else. We're not taking your airplane parts. That's what it was, Boeing. They accepted the Boeing jets. That was the thing that they effectively allowed. Effectively saying, okay, this is hurting our industry. We're going to accept this because, we'll accept this. It's practical for us to do this, but we're still in this trade war, right? Like, is that the way they looked at it? That we knew? I mean, because I could see, the thing is, the consideration is that China's long thinking, that they think through this stuff, not necessarily in this kind of fly by the seat way that Donald Trump is effectively doing it. That when he came in, they thought, we have a strategy, we have a plan, and we're going to implement that plan. We're not going to take this line down. We're going to go with the plan in the way we understand it moving forward. And that is effectively what they're doing. They're implementing strategy that they planned years ago.
Absolutely. I mean, the Chinese are big planners, as you point out. They're long-term thinkers. It is a government that believes in planning, it's a dirigist, market socialist economy. So they plan their work and then they work their plan. And certainly they've been preparing since the last Trump administration. Trump sent all the messages that they needed to know. They're not going to ignore those messages. They know what Trump is saying, and they have been preparing since 2016, but actually since 2011, since Obama declared the pivot to Asia and the TPP and air-sea battle, which is why they started building out the Belt and Road to all the countries of the global South, in particular the Asian continent. And really, I would argue that they've been planning since 1949, because the US has wanted to roll back China since 1949. And I believe that plan has never changed. It simply morphed into different strategies, different tactics. But I think the Chinese are aware of that. And certainly, the taking them into the WTO and hoping that, they would collapse because capitalism, that didn't work. Tiananmen, which was a color revolution attempt, didn't work. Air-sea battle and the strangulation approach, they did a counter strategy, which was the Belt and Road. And then Trump's, two-stage tariffs. The first stage of tariffs during his first administration, they kind of out-negotiated him, and they never got to part two of the trade tariff, the first Trump trade tariff war, which was they were supposed to dismantle their economic system and sell off their state-owned enterprises. The Chinese didn't even let them go there, but they knew what was coming down the pike, and they were preparing for it. So yeah, Carla is absolutely right.
What do you think Trump wants? There was Vincent, the I guess Treasury Secretary. I played the farcical speech that he made, saying, "We want to help China. We're just love and light. We just believe in helping people, and we just want to help them to modulate their economy and blah 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 blah." With a person like that, how do you negotiate with that guy? He has a very specific objective that he wants to accomplish, and that is to the detriment of China. And they know it's to the detriment of China. So how do you, I guess what I'm asking is, what do you think they want in any kind of negotiation? And what would China want in any kind of negotiation with the United States, if indeed it even negotiates with the US? I mean, I don't know if Trump can eat crow enough to phone Xi Jinping, and he's going to wait for a phone call that is never going to come from Xi Jinping. Both sides have dug in. But assume for the moment that both sides do talk. What do you think?
Well, I mean, according to President Trump, he's already talking to President Xi, right? I mean, we don't know if it's his imaginary friend, Xi Jinping, but he claims that he's already in dialogue. And the Chinese have come out, and they never do this, but they have come out, the foreign ministry has come out, in full frontal saying, no, we have not talked to that guy. So that's about as blunt as you can get it, right? So in some sense, Trump, I think, is already eating crow. I mean, he's certainly backpedaling. He's certainly taking back all of his moves. And I believe that eventually, if he wants, I think the Chinese will offer him some kind of face-saving way to re-engage, hopefully, because otherwise, the alternative is actually global catastrophe, certainly global recession, and then certainly global, escalation to world war. I think that's a real possibility. What does Trump want? I think at the end of the day, he wants people to kiss his ass, and he wants to be considered the greatest, right? I think that's what it boils down to. What does Besant want? What does Hegseth want? What do Lutnick? What do the other people want? It's a variety of agendas, and they have overlapping and separate agendas. Navarro's agenda is not quite the same thing as Besant, etc. Navarro wants, sincerely, I believe, in his misguided way, I believe that he sincerely wants to reshore industry to the United States. I've said before that is not going to happen. Mm-hmm. It's not going to happen for a variety of reasons, but essentially a monopolized capitalist corporations do not want to do industrial manufacturing. They would much rather financialize and get cheap rents based on their monopoly power, on their power to gouge the working class, rather than do the hard work, which will actually take decades of building up industries, making risky investments, training people, and this training will take decades too, and then seeing if they can, rebuild industrial capacity. That is not going to happen. And so when Trump says China stole our jobs, absurdity. First there's a kind of socialist thinking, which is the notion that, that people under capitalism, people are not entitled to jobs. Under socialism, under certain systems, people are given jobs, right? Everybody has the right to work. Everybody has the right to livelihood. In the US system, a job is not a guarantee, and it's not a possession that you can hold, right? And so when they say they stole our jobs, how did they steal them? It's absurd. It's the US ruling imperial plutocratic class went abroad for two reasons. One is they wanted the kind of windfall profits from exploiting cheap labor. And secondly, they wanted to discipline labor inside the United States. When unions were making too many demands, they were saying, no, you don't get to ask anything of us. We're going to take our ball and play in another court. And it was a very deliberate attempt to discipline labor, right? So I think that horse has left the band. So Peter Navarro is misguided. There is not going to be significant reshoring. And even if it is, it's going to largely involve automation, which is not going to create massive amounts of industrial manufacturing jobs. And then the other piece is people need to understand this. Manufacturing is really, really hard. And there is no such thing as an easy job. Anybody who's been in the workplace knows that there's no such thing as an easy job. But manufacturing is certainly not easy, and it requires tremendous skill and experience and gumption and hard work and discipline. All of these things that I think that the U.S. Has to train people back up into doing. The other thing is, and this relates to de-industrialization, it's really important for people to understand this, is that the U.S. has not only had a 50-year process of de-industrialization, it's had a 50-year process of de-skilling. That is, it's made jobs fungible. That is, you want to make jobs as unskilled as possible, so that you can exchange workers in this rapid fashion. So, for example, if you're a short order cook is actually a pretty skilled job. Anybody can fry an egg, but to fry 50 eggs at the same time with perfect timing while doing the toast and the coffee and everything else and the salad, everything else at the same time, that is actually, you're like an orchestral conductor. It is actually a skilled job. If you take a job like that and you break it down into its component parts, you essentially, what you do is you de-skill it. So this is why somebody can walk into McDonald's, and then, which isn't to say that McDonald's work is easy, but you can go in and you can start working that very day. It doesn't take you months and years to get to a high level of skill. And certainly the moment you walk out, you will be replaced immediately. And so this process of de-skilling and of making workers fungible, interchangeable, has been happening for decades now. And that is not, and that process has to be reversed. And there's no inclination to do that. And then last but not least, the coming always back to the training piece. The youth in the United States are not being given the skills to succeed. Basic literacy skills are lacking. Your average person reads at a 6th grade level. And just one example, in California, there are, thousands of linemen, electrical linemen, who are going to retire, and nobody can replace them because there are not enough trained youth in the trades who can do that work. And so the electricity grid is going to collapse even further. And you need electricity for industrialization. So there's so many levels of like poor policy that have accrued over the decades that have led us to this point that it is not going to be easy to reindustrialize, even if they were genuine about that.
And by the way, destroying the Department of Education is not a beneficial thing. The school loan policy, the notion that you don't have free college or free schools where people can go and do whatever like, meaning it's one thing if you're unlocking the potential of a public. Say, hey, I don't care if you're dirt poor. I don't care if you're homeless. You can go to college. You can go to school. You may have duds, but you're also going to have people who, under normal circumstances, wouldn't have went into school to learn to be a doctor, to learn to be a nurse, to learn to be a tradesman, to learn to be a linesman. Those are things that you want people to do. And instead, what we decide, hey, we can maximize our profit on the backs of an 18-year-old. Okay, that creates a disincentive for those kids to go and get that education. Trump is not doing anything about that. Like, it's almost magical thinking that you're going to somehow build up industry in the US without training people to do those industries and without creating a foundation in regards to like a governmental foundation to put people in a prime position to be able to do those jobs. They're not doing that. That's not part of the math. That's not part of the dynamic. It's just, if we build it, they would come. And what his mind is, if we increase prices, then we can support various industries that we couldn't support in the US under normal circumstances. But now if people have to pay more for that t-shirt, pay more for that item, that product, then now you can have it made in the USA. I think it's a faulty premise. I think that stuff takes years, if not decades. Trump is going to be dead before seeing any results of it, if any results at all come about. I agree with you. I agree with you wholeheartedly.
You're absolutely right, Jamal. And, just coming back to this notion of education, I grew up in South Korea, which was undergoing rapid development and industrialization. So just to kind of drive home this idea about education, starting the age of 12, everybody in my school, and we're just a regular, middle school, but everybody in my school was taught about, the metallurgy, ferrous metallurgy. So
Right.
we learned about quenching and annealing and the carbon content of different types of steel. And then we also learned the 20 different types of shipping insurance. This is starting at the age of 12 or 13.
Wait, did you say shipping insurance?
Yeah, the different types of shipping insurance, who pays for the insurance, where does it start from, etc. When you're doing trade, all of these things are stuff that you have to know, or eventually, people have to become expert in this. So we learned all of these things because the country was industrializing, and it was expected that many of us would start to go into these trades and that you would need a trained workforce to deal with it. And this is what you have to do. You actually have to start it pretty young. You have to start, youth with, math and all those basic skills. And then you also have to teach them the specific skills related to various industrial sectors. Let me give you another example. In China, there are entire high schools that are dedicated to training youth, that's like 15 and 16-year-olds, how to work on EVs, right? These are entire, starting the age of 15, they learn how to fix EVs. We don't have that. I'm sure we have like short-term programs where you can pay through the nose to, to learn some of the basics, but you don't have, systematic, entire programs set up by, local departments of education to do that. You just don't have that kind of, forethought or, policy level programming. And so these are things that we need to do if we were serious about that. You don't see any of that. So that lets us know that the project of these tariffs isn't really about industrialization, or certainly it's not serious about industrialization. It's really about, finding a pretext to give tax cuts, even more tax cuts to the plutocrats, and for, bashing the rest of the world, and possibly, as Brian Berletic says, is, building out a kind of isolationist structure and a decoupling that prepares for wars. And then, last piece, as you said, we've said this before, but when you take an 18-year-old and you make them take out, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of dollars in loans, the only thing you've done, two things. One is you've saddled them with debt for the rest of their lives, and they can never discharge those loans. Before, you used to be able to declare bankruptcy. You can no longer do that regarding student loans. So, you can expect to be paying those loans into your retirement and beyond. And at the same time, it makes, so that's the extractive part of financialized capital that is always trying to gain rents from the working class. And the second piece is you've disciplined them and you've made sure that they don't get any ideas, that they're not going to be, free thinkers or, creative or etc. You've set them up essentially to be exploited and extracted, and they won't challenge the system because they're already too burdened with debt. And then the last thing that you're doing there is you are, creating an entire ecosystem where everything is fed for profit, that you're not really, education in its best sense is the cultivation of the best capacities of each individual so that a society can flourish, that you train, teach, develop each individual to reach their highest potential. And by saddling them with debt right from the get-go, you send the message that you are just a worker drone, and you are going to, be under the boot heel of the plutocratic class the rest of your life, and that you're going to be essentially, you think of all these private schools that go into working class neighborhoods and they make big promises to these kids. Kids are 18, 17, they know nothing about it. They sign on the dotted line. Next thing you know, they're in the hawk for tens of thousands of dollars at schools that are essentially mills for extracting money from them, that they do nothing for, these working class students. They don't even train them or teach them anything. They just know that they have a captive audience that they've sold a bill of goods to, and they keep on, extracting money. And then when the kids can't pay, they put the money into collections, and next thing you know, collections is coming after these kids. So it's such a vicious, pernicious, ugly system, and it happens all the time from all directions.
At 17, you're not even allowed to drink alcohol, and yet you can sign on the dotted line for a loan that you're going to have for the next 60 years. It's outrageous. It's just outrageous. And my boss used to talk about how in other countries, they want kids to go to school, and so they don't charge them for it. And the U.S. is competing with other countries where kids can just go to school when they want to. And those kids would go to school, and they would come here, and they would get all of these really good jobs. Meaning, his point was, you guys are screwing yourselves in regards to the world economy and the world market by putting this on the backs of children in this way. You're damaging your workforce, your kids. And, I remember ECPI, some of these schools that you're talking about, those mills, you can't even transfer credits to accredited schools. So effectively, you have a degree that you can't really use for anything short of a specific task that you may or may not get. No, I agree with you. ECPI was one of those schools. I remember being in class, we were doing software engineering, and let's say 90% of the class couldn't do it, and they still got an A. It was that, right?
Yeah.
And I remember my teacher took me aside. He says, okay, you seem to be really proficient at this. I'm going to give you a separate project. Okay, he had to do that because I could do it, right? And many of the other people couldn't code themselves out of a paper bag. And yet they would still get B's and A's. It was almost like it was just a given, as opposed to, okay, they're not going to use it anyway. They have other jobs. This is a throwaway degree. No, you're absolutely right. One last question before I let you go. Where do you fall on the Brian Berletic thing? Because there's two streams of thoughts. One is, okay, Trump really does believe that manufacturing can come back to the United States by using tariffs. He read a book on William McKinley, and he heard about tariffs, and he believes this country ran on tariffs at one point, and we can do it again. We can, anybody who's making under $200,000, the tariffs can just pay their taxes. Now, everybody else looked at this, okay, this guy's incompetent, right? But he may believe that. The people around him may have a different idea. As you pointed out, all of them may have different ideas in regards to what they want to do and what they want to accomplish. And whether they fully explain those ideas to Trump is secondary to the point. I don't know if George Bush knew about Project for a New American Century as he was going about doing Project for a New American Century. I don't know if Donald Trump entirely knows about Pathway to Persia as he goes about seemingly following a very similar playbook to Pathway to Persia. He may be sending Wickoff over there to actually get a deal, not wanting a war, while simultaneously people around him pushing him to do things that are red lines in order to get their playbook through. So what he knows and what he wants may be secondary to let's say, how he's being maneuvered, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I tend to agree with you. First, the thing is, whatever it is the administration is doing, it is very confused, and they're sending multiple mixed messages. We do know that there is a significant batch of neocons inside the administration. Is that Trump's agenda? Were they, recommended to him? Were they forced upon him? How successful are they? All of these things will remain to be seen. What we do know is that, I don't want to sound trite, but there is this thing that we call the deep state, right? It's the permanent national security state. And John Kiriakou, who was at the CIA, he said they would refer to the president as the temps, right? These are temporary people. We are the people who have the real power. We have the enduring institutional capacity, and we do what we want. And the temps, they come and go. So I think there is some real momentum. As I've pointed out many times before, there is real momentum to war. Bessent, this is his third try at taking down China. He tried twice before, once with Soros, once with his own hedge fund. And this time, he's saying that, out of the goodness of our hearts, we want China to change. Well, if you want China to change, there's a deep contradiction there, because you want to help China because it needs change, because it's not doing so well. At the same time, you want it to change because it's doing too well, right? So there's a deep contradiction. Essentially, Bessent wants to take down China. He wants to destroy China. And his primary method is through financial means, as he tried before during the Asian crisis, where they shorted the Hong Kong dollar, right? You know how shorting works. Essentially, when you're in business, the rule is to buy low and sell high, correct? Okay. When you're shorting something, you're kind of inverting the timeline, or you're moving against, the stream of time. And what you do is you buy high. So a traditional business, you buy low and sell high, right? And when you're shorting, what you do is you revert that time sequence. So you sell high and you buy low. Okay. How do you do that? You do that by borrowing money. So I asked Jamal, can I borrow $100 from you? I take your $100, I sell it on the market, and I get 700 yuan. And then the dollar drops, and then I take the 700 yuan that I have, and I buy dollars again, but this time the dollars are cheaper. And so then I return your money to you. I can even pay you interest, and I've still made out more money than through this shorting process. Now, the thing that happens when you have a trader like Bessent is not simply are they shorting, but the mere fact that they're buying and selling forces the market to go down. And this is what Bessent tried to do during the Asian IMF crisis. He essentially tried to destroy the Chinese economy, and he was successful in destroying several Asian economies, including Korea, Thailand, Malaysia, etc. So this can be very, very powerful. And they made what, $6-8 billion from this, run on currencies in Asia. Although it cost those countries, it cost them hundreds of billions of dollars. But these are ruthless people. I mean, they see. I mean, Soros' agenda is to destroy China. I mean, he sees China as the primary threat to his notion of whatever is a good world. And Besant was his field marshal. He was his campaign manager in attempting to attack China. And so he tried it under Soros, and then he tried it with himself. And this is his third time. And now he has tariffs to do that. So he's waging financial war. He's the general of financial war. Navarro wants to reshore things. Hegseth wants, I believe, to escalate into military confrontation. How well are they coordinating with each other? How well is this thought out? I'm not so sure about this, because if they were thinking things out, they would think about sequencing and critical paths, and they haven't done any of that. Essentially, they're all kind of, just throwing something at the wall and seeing if they can, make it happen. But I believe at the end of the day that regardless of what Trump wants or doesn't want, I think that the escalation against China is real and very, very concrete. It's very, very tangible. You can see what's happening in Asia with all the escalating military exercises, the installation of very, very threatening weapon systems. For example, the Typhoon system in the Philippines, the counterforce, missiles in the Okinawan area, Okinawan archipelago, etc. And so these escalations are very, very real and concrete. And this is why China is sending a very, very strong message, not simply that it is ready for financial war, economic war, trade war, but that it is also ready to go to the mat if it turns kinetic. And the horrifying thing is that if it goes kinetic, the US cannot win a war against China. It's simply not possible. They were unable to win a war against China when they confronted it directly in 1950, when China was one of the poorest countries on the planet. And the troops that were fighting the US, were wearing sneakers in the snow. This was how poor China was. Now, China is, 1,000 times more powerful than them. And the US is not stupid. They understand that that is the case. But what they are banking on, as far as I can tell from policy papers that are being circulated, is they plan to go nuclear. And this is why they're talking about having this seamless continuity between conventional and tactical nuclear weapons. And if it goes tac nuke, it will also go strategic nuclear. And this is where I, disagree, for example, with Carl. Carl Za, seems to think that the US doesn't have capacity to wage war. Certainly, it doesn't have the real industrial capacity. China controls the rare earth metals. 900 pounds of rare earth metals go into every F-35. If they can't get those rare earth metals from China, they can't build those weapons. The same thing with Boeing parts, etc. But what they are counting on is what is called, counterforce strike, rapid. Essentially, it's a nuclear sucker punch. Rapid.
It's a decapitation strike with nuclear weapons.
Exactly. And China is not going to put up with that. And so this is the real danger. So I think that we are in a world which is very, very dangerous. And we have to see the trade war as potentially this pre-kinetic dimension of a oncoming kinetic war, that the train is coming at us, which is why we have to work, I believe, to de-escalate the trade war and also to, do everything we can to work for peace.
Carl, what you say, Carl Shaw? You think because Carl's stick is they don't have the balls to do it. And I think, I don't know, and these, it's a jumble. It's
the grizzly bear fallacy, right? I said that 6% of US adults, sentient US adults, believe that they can fight a grizzly bear and defeat it with their bare hands, right? I believe that there are people in the ruling imperial class, and certainly the corporate techno-fascist feudal class, who believe that they have the technical wherewithal to defeat China. These are people like Paul Malaki at Anduril, the Palantir guys who are facilitating the genocide in Gaza. They believe that with some good coding and some AI and some bots and some interconnected drones, that they can destroy China. So these people are the tech equivalent of the 6% that believe that they can fight a grizzly with their bare hands, except they're going to fight it with lines of code.
KJ, always appreciate you, man. And the audience loves you. Thank you. KJ No, he's a journalist, political analyst, writer, teacher, specializing in the geopolitics of the Asia-Pacific region. He's a contributor to the book Capitalism on a Ventilator, once censored by Amazon. It is now available at iacenter.org. You can also catch him on, what can people find you?
The China Report on YouTube, on the Breakthrough News Network. And I just put out an interview with Dr. Victor Gao, who is very, very experienced hand on Chinese and U.S. politics.
Oh, very cool. Where can they find it? Well, they can find it on the thing, but they can find it now.
They can find it now. It just came out yesterday on the China Report.
Oh, perfect timing. Perfect timing. KJ, man, thank you for this. By the way, is the China Report live, or is it putting out videos?
We're putting out videos. We actually pre-record, and then it is put out in a live format so people can watch it and comment.
Very cool. You have a fantastic day, KJ. Thank you for this. I appreciate it.
Thank you. Always a pleasure.
Absolutely. All right. I learn something every time KJ comes